I'm gonna make a bold statement here. Kingdom Come Deliverance II is one of the best games I've ever played and is probably the best RPG immersive sim on the market. This is honestly a shocking revelation for me because a month prior to its release, I barely knew anything about it. As I'll explain, immersive sim RPGs are probably my favorite genre, but they're rare because the genre is constantly being bottlenecked by two things: technology and money. Having a good story with branching options imbued in it takes a lot of resources already, with its numerous voice lines and animations to account for this. But creating a beautiful, historically grounded world while simulating the complex systems of real life like hunger, crime, and class dynamics is a monumental task to pull off. But Warhorse Studios has done it. I just finished 111 hours of my first campaign run through, and that's with me focusing main story for the last quarter, since it's near 2 months post the game's release, and I originally planned for this to come out in a timely manner. There's probably 20 to 30 plus hours still of side content I've left, and I cannot wait to go back in on an eventual hardcore release. But first, let me take you through my journey, avoiding major story spoilers of course, and show you why Kingdom Come Deliverance II is now one of my all-time favorite games. For over a decade now, I've been chasing this feeling I had the first time I booted up Skyrim. That moment where the world felt massive, the choices felt real, and I could live inside the game, not just play it. Something akin to the simulations found in Shangri-La Frontier or Sword Art Online. Red Dead Redemption 2 came close, really close. In fact, I'd say it was the benchmark for me for a long time. Its cinematic storytelling, emotional beats, and immersive details made it a masterpiece in its own right. But even Red Dead, for all of its brilliance, couldn't quite satisfy every part of the immersive sim itch. The world was rich, but it didn't always feel as reactive and alive. From there, it was a long string of games that promised the world and came up short. No Man's Sky had the wonder, but no soul. Cyberpunk sold a city that looked alive, but barely really responded to you. Starfield gave us planetary surface sims, but no real reason to stay and explore them. Even great RPGs like Baldur's Gate 3 and Dragon's Dogma 2 didn't scratch the immersive sim side of the genre, the part where systems overlap and the world feels like it exists even when you're not looking. That's what I've been looking for, a game where story systems and settings pull you in, not just to play, but to exist. And that's where Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 comes in. Start to finish, it scratched that itch. It's not the perfect sim, we're not there yet, but it pushed us closer. So let me take you through my journey. 111 hours of discovery, consequence, and some of the most grounded, believable role-playing I've ever experienced. The sequel doesn't waste time. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 picks up right where the first game left off. Literally, I played the first game immediately prior to this experience, netting around 70 hours with the main campaign. So ending that game riding off to the Trotsky region, then picking up just hours later in the sequel was something I haven't experienced before. And because of this, the leap in quality is immediately obvious. Characters see a notable facelift, and even their facial animations see a boost. Landscapes stretch for miles, lighting feels natural, interiors are packed with detail, but the presentation isn't just beautiful, it's cinematic. Within minutes, the game gives you wide establishing shots, letterbox black bars, and swelling thematic music that wouldn't be out of place in a high-budget historical film. There's one scene early on with Henry and Capon riding through the hills, and I swear it felt like a montage straight out of the Fellowship of the Ring. And Kuttenberg, we'll talk about that more later, but it's probably the most convincing city I've ever seen in a video game. But what really impressed me early on was how they set up Henry for both the returning player, but also the brand new player. You were having chats over a fire with the traveling posse about crucial beats that happened in the previous game, and they seem so natural, like the boar hunt that went awry with Capon, a crucial moment in their friendship as they went from adversaries to having respect for each other. But it isn't all front-loaded with exposition dumps. Midway through the game, I was still having run-ins with travelers who casually reminded us of Henry's time as a monk. As much as it showed that there was a world cultivated that reacted to the previous game's decisions, there was also an immediate indicator of your current choices having an impact on the world. Early in the game, you get into a scuffle with some town guards and punch one in the eye. I thought that was it. But as I was exploring the town after this, I found that same guard wandering around with a black eye. I was blown away by this. And then, very quickly, I noticed something else. Systems I used to tolerate in the original had been fixed. The stealth system now had proper feedback, alchemy felt purposeful, and the combat saw a cleanup. The game had a more refined way about it that aided in feeling like it was real. There were still hiccups, sure, but it already felt like Warhorse had evolved. Even in the first hour, it was clear this wasn't just more Kingdom Come, it was the version they always wanted to make. And with the bones of the first game fully refined, it felt like the immersive sim I've been waiting for. One of the things that truly sets Kingdom Come Deliverance II apart is its refusal to give you clean choices and answers. It would have been easy for this story to take a side. Here's the good king, here's the bad one, now go kill the bandits and be a hero. But instead it presents something far more honest. From the very beginning, across both games, you're caught between two failing ideologies. On one hand, Wenceslas, your supposed king, is a drunk whose neglect has weakened the realm. On the other is Sigismund, a warlord who illegally imprisoned his brother and is unleashing chaos across the kingdom. Neither side feels right. One is simply less wrong. And in the sequel, that tension is even sharper. The first game's region leaned toward Wenceslas, but Trotsky and Kutenberg, full-blown civil conflict. You'll meet people from both sides and they'll give you reasons that sound just. I was even challenged to a duel purely because a character didn't like the way I had aligned myself politically. That kind of real friction runs through the heart of this game. But where KCD2 really surprised me was in the smaller stories, especially the side quests. These aren't just filler, they show you who Henry is, or more accurately, who you've decided Henry is. There's one quest that begins as a simple missing person case. Just find someone's father, but it unravels into a deeply layered family conflict full of half-truths, bitterness, and decisions that can't be undone. No morality meter, no clear right answer, just people, human, messy, real. I didn't agonize over these choices because I wanted better loot. To be honest, I barely cared about the loot. I was constantly thinking, what would Henry do? In this run, I imagined him as vengeful but kind, grounded by trauma but still trying to be good. I wasn't chasing a perfect ending, but trying to stay true to who Henry was. That's part of what makes this game feel special. The choices aren't black and white. You choose based on your character where you go with it, and it doesn't judge you for where you land, only shows you the consequences. Immersive sims live or die by their systems. What blew me away with Kingdom Come Deliverance II is how all of them come together not to overwhelm you, but to reinforce the feeling that you're living inside a living world. In the first game, some of these mechanics were ambitious, but often frustrating. Stealth felt like guesswork, alchemy was clunky, lockpicking was annoying, and combat, it had promise, but the group fights especially were kind of a mess. In their previous state, these systems often conflicted with immersion. Instead of drawing me in, I was focused on their clunkiness, and that broke the sim entirely, sort of invalidating the purpose of which it was introduced. In KCD2, Warhorse refines all these to aid the experience instead of taking away from it. Stealth now gives visual feedback with a new UI using rapid indicators. This is a stand-in for senses like sound and sight that can't be fully realized inside of a game like this. This is somewhat common in games nowadays, but its previous iteration was way too clunky and ruined the immersion. The combat still has weight and challenge, but it's faster and more fluid. It was something I couldn't get a handle of in the previous game, but now I generally really enjoy it this time around. Even archery feels pretty good now, even potentially overpowered later in the game. I opted to play as longsword focused as it seemed on brand for Henry and his story. I've never used a longsword over another option in a video game, so it was a very fun, new experience for me. Another similar call I made that was unlike any RPG decision I had made up until this point was to avoid lockpicking or pickpocketing, as I just didn't think my version of Henry would do that. It was quite fun opting away from efficiency to invoke more realism, but that did come back to bite me more than once. Medium and hard locks, not an option, so I had to find other ways in. That didn't frustrate me, it immersed me, especially since the game sets up a variety of different options for completing tasks, and the skills themselves are smarter this time around. Every action you take feeds into growth. Ride a lot, your horsemanship improves and you ride longer and faster. Read books, your scholarship increases so you learn how the law works. You can literally argue your way out of fines and punishment with guards based around how the law is written. It's the kind of progression that makes you want to put more time into the game, not just rush to the next objective. And then there's survival. The hunger, the sleep, the gear repair, cleanliness, and even carry capacity. It's still here, but now it feels like it flows with everything else. Nothing gets in your way. Instead, it reminds you that Henry is a man, someone who bleeds, who needs rest, who actually eats food. In the previous game and others in the genre, survival isn't necessarily an immersive element, but more so a factor of constraint with the guise of realism. In this game, it feels natural. Bathing, getting food, and fixing gear when reaching a new town, or just sleeping when it gets close to dark becomes part of the natural routine. It generally is done very well here and doesn't work to annoy me as much as it did in the previous game and others of the like. KCD2 doesn't throw systems at you for complexity's sake. Everything just clicks into place. Instead of feeling like systems stacked on top of each other, they feel like parts of a whole, each one supporting the immersion, not fighting against it. There's something special about a world that doesn't feel like it's waiting for you. That's one of the biggest leaps into immersion that Warhorse Studios made with Kingdom Come Deliverance II. This isn't a world built around the player. It's one that feels like it would keep on moving if Henry dropped dead in a ditch. And it's not just about the size of the map, though to be clear, the regions of Trotsky and Kudenberg are massive, and Kudenberg in particular is probably the most convincing medieval, or just large, city I've ever seen in a game. It's about the density, the rhythms, the way villages operate on their own timetable, the way people actually have jobs to do with real vendors and places of interest scattered throughout, and you're just another person passing through. Speaking of a lived-in world, I had this one mission where I worked a full day at a vineyard, literally paid by how much physical labor I got done before the town's evening bell rang. I don't know for sure, but I imagine if I went there the next day, I would continue to make a daily wage working at this vineyard. That's not the kind of quest design you expect in modern RPGs, but it is what you would hope is in an immersive sim. In this world, money matters. You start with nothing, you're broke, you can't afford armor repairs or proper meals, let alone healing or a warm bed. Survival systems are thrust forward here as you need to survive, and this is where some of the most surprising things happen for me. I started doing alchemy. Let me be clear, I hated alchemy in the first game. It was cool, but needlessly fussy and rarely worth the effort. But here, it's been reworked. When the game first let me loose after its initial story setup, I got roughed up pretty bad in a duel and was left with barely any health. I spent like an hour wandering around trying to figure out how I could heal myself, since I had no money to correct this. I couldn't craft a potion yet since I didn't have the recipe, and the merchant was selling it for 150 groschen, which is 145 more than I had. So I started picking local plants and making basic potions. To my surprise, alchemy felt smoother and less buggy than in the first game, and in that moment, it was exactly what I needed to get my footing. And the craziest part, I didn't feel like I was gaming the system. I was being Henry. I wasn't robbing nobles or pickpocketing merchants. I was using what was available to me, selling potions, making ends meet. The vendor only had a handful of groschen daily and was giving me awful prices because my reputation was low in town and I was filthy. But it was something, and I was happy. Blacksmithing, now fully playable, was another big moment like this. By the time I hit the final stretch, I was finally flush with coin. But the economy had done its job. It grounded me when I needed to be grounded. I wasn't steamrolling the sim. I'd earned my way to stability, and it matched the story's pace. The random occurrences, something that also elevates a world to feel real, were plenty in this game. In one such case, it was by a man begging on the road, a former knight who defected for moral reasons. You could kill him, rob him, like it kind of sets up for you to do, but I asked, why are you doing this? And he told me, and it led me down a very cool side story that I wasn't even looking to initially interact with. And when I tell you that these cool occurrences happen constantly, I'm not exaggerating. I was 111 hours into the game and was still having very interesting interruptions every other fast travel. In KCD 2, everything matters and provides a sense of a real world. Whether you're patching boots, boiling herbs, or helping a blacksmith's wife navigate a political feud, every part of the world reinforces the illusion that it's real, and that's exactly what makes it so special. It's not just immersive, it's an immersive sim done right. Most RPGs treat side quests like filler, side content that allows you to do stuff off the main track with your character, exploring different themes. And that's at best. Sometimes it's just fetch this, kill that, talk to them, fast travel back. But in Kingdom Come Deliverance II, the side quests are just so much more complex and intriguing. I note this because every time I tried to go back on track with the main story, some simple task would spiral into a 2-hour multi-stage journey filled with tension, emotion, and unexpected choices. And the thing is, they often start like the typical RPG fare. Make some horseshoes for a blacksmith's wife, for instance. That's the setup. But then it becomes about economic survival, a love affair, pregnancy, abandonment, and a woman hiding in the woods, terrified of what's next. And it's on Henry, you, to piece it together to find a way forward. That quest was unexpectedly fun. It could have just been crafting and delivering items, but it had something else, heart. It left me asking not what would be the best reward, but what's the right thing to do? That's a reoccurring theme. A lot of those gray moral choices can be found in basically every one of these side quests. And because I was playing Henry as a man driven by vengeance, but trying to be good, but these moments tested that constantly. Sometimes I made decisions I wasn't proud of. Other times I felt like I made the best of a bad situation. But never once did I feel like I was just checking a box or fast traveling between objectives. There's one that starts with a man who literally has an arrow in his forehead, a goofy, obvious nod to Skyrim. Sure, but by the end of it, I was making a real moral decision that had consequences for an entire troop of people. Or take a quest where I stumbled into a religious dispute over what a local farmer believes are mysterious bones. What starts starts off as a quirky local folklore, turns into a deep commentary on power, belief, and greed. People lie, people get hurt, groups try to manipulate you, and whether or not you believe those bones matter, they clearly do to everyone else. That's the thing, these quests don't just tell cool stories, they enrich the themes of the game. Moral ambiguity, personal responsibility, the tension between what's right, what's legal, and what's survivable. This isn't the kind of content you can just ignore or speed through. I mean, you quite literally could, but some of my most fun I had in this campaign was getting distracted by a random encounter. And before you knew it, what started as a quick errand has turned into one of the most memorable gaming moments of the year. There's a literal separation between main and optional quests in the game, but the depth they have almost makes it seem like they received equal love and thought, which I have to say is a lot of fun in regards to searching them out. Everything feeds back into who Henry is becoming, and by extension, who you are in this world. That's what makes Kingdom Come Deliverance II so special. In most RPGs, that side content is where the seams show, but here, it's where you're able to explore more of Henry. This isn't just side content, it's the heart of Henry's story, and maybe yours too. One of the biggest surprises about Kingdom Come Deliverance II is how carefully it handles pacing. In the first game, the back half felt rushed. Henry became less of a survivor and more of a military errand boy, and the quests started to blur together, losing some of the grounded human weight that defined its early hours. But this time, Warhorse nailed it. I spent nearly 30 hours in the opening region alone just getting my bearings, as mentioned in the previous sections. There's no rush to push the player forward, instead the story grows with you, and just when I thought I had a handle on the world, it hit me with one of its first big moments, the wedding scene. It's a turning point, not just for the plot, but for Henry, and after that high, the game breathes again. Then, when you transition eventually to Kuttenberg, the tone shifts. The city is massive, the scale is broader, and even the game's cinematics reflect that shift. We get wide sweeping landscape shots again to highlight this slightly different landscape and to show its vastness. One of the early main quests in the next region has you tracking down a band of characters scattered across the region, a perfect excuse to meet new people, discover towns, and get caught up in side content. The pacing ebbs and flows with real intent. It gives you room to explore, to immerse, to become Henry, before tightening the screws for its final act. And here's something I didn't expect. The game almost knows it's long. It uses that time in brilliant ways. By the time you reach Kuttenberg, potentially 50 to 60 hours in, it feels like a new season of a TV show. You've changed, Henry's changed, and when you start encountering familiar faces again, there's this quiet realization that they're meeting a different Henry than the one they knew. A Henry who's seen more, been through more. The passage of time isn't just some lower thirds that says however long later, and you just accept that. It's a piece of the storytelling, because 50 hours regardless of who you are is a long passage of time in game. It's built into the story. But another great change that stuck out to me is the why. In KCD2, Henry has a reason to be the center of everything. He's not some noble, he's not a general, he's some people don't recognize. That makes him perfect for covert work, sabotage, diplomacy, investigation, and the game leans into this. It's a much more believable narrative setup than in the first game. You're not being forced into command roles you haven't earned. You're being used because you're useful. That makes your involvement feel earned, not artificial. It also helps that the game's systems reinforce this flexibility. There's a moment where Capon refuses to cooperate, and you can handle it the hard way, or if you're observant, you can just knock him out. That's not a dialogue choice, it's a mechanic, and it works. It's a small thing, but it speaks to how the game allows for creativity even in scripted story beats. It respects player agency within the rails of a historical narrative, and that's a tension the game handles masterfully. Yes, there's a story tied to real history, which means some outcomes are set in stone, but the how, the way you get there, is flexible, reactive, and personal. Your choices have weight, not just in how the characters react, but in how you process the story. There's a moment late in the game when you're given control over a raid and you have to choose how it unfolds. Do you raise a village, killing innocents to save your men, or protect civilians, risking the lives of those under your command? For me, this was personal. Henry's entire story begins with his hometown being burned to the ground for a similar reason. I couldn't become the thing that made him. Later, the game asks you to choose who goes on a very dangerous mission. You're not picking pawns, you're picking between people you know, survivors from Skalitz, a nervous ditch digger, a seasoned but aged hunter, a local warrior you've come to trust on the road, and even a close friend. I agonized over that choice. Typically, games have stuff like this and it's just surface level, but at this point, I didn't know if choosing the less experienced people that I didn't have deep connections with would cause certain failure, or sending the more experienced folks I had deeper connection with would help it be successful, or just end up with them dead anyways. But what makes makes this narrative structure sing even more is the cast. Kingdom Come Deliverance II makes room for characters in a way the first game didn't. Everyone feels sharper, more defined. Capon, who was a side distraction in the first game, is now almost a second protagonist to Henry. Godwin, once just a rowdy priest, whom I personally was lukewarm on from the first game, becomes a much more interesting character, and his voice acting was great this time around. The Devil's Troop, a ragtag group of mercenaries, provide some of the most memorable moments and combat encounters in the story, and the entire supporting cast, from friends on the wall to the nobles in the court, enrich the game and the experience to levels its predecessor didn't. They're people you ride with, bleed with, argue with. No, I didn't dislike anyone from the previous cast. It's just the cast in this game is so good. There are so many characters. The game's main story makes you, as Henry, do as much different and cool things that I didn't want to even remotely ruin. But I will say this, there is a very optional scene in the game near the end that you could completely miss without knowing. This scene is super impactful and in my opinion really helps drive home the themes of the story, and to me it's crazy that they left this as optional. This isn't just a tale about medieval politics or vengeance, it's about trauma, growth, and the murky space between right and wrong. And because of how the game uses its pacing and time, this story had much more of an impact as I felt like I was more connected to the world and the people, and thus the outcome. It created an experience I won't forget, and one I'm already eager to return to. Even as one of the best immersive sims I've ever played, Kingdom Come Deliverance II is not without its flaws. And because so much of the game thrives on immersion, even small cracks in the illusion stand out more than they would elsewhere. Let's start with the combat, because it's good. Actually, it's great. There's a real weight to every weapon. The system's tactical nature forces you to think like someone fighting for their life, not mashing buttons for spectacle. It's immersive combat that is definitely not the norm, nor easy route to use. But even with all these improvements, group combat remains janky. When it's one-on-one, the game shines. But the moment you're swarmed or fighting in tight quarters, like during one battle atop a siege tower, it all starts to fall apart. One moment you're dropping a guy with precision, next you're dogpiled by 4 others. It gets chaotic fast. I don't know how you'd even fix this because the scale of these moments matter narratively, but they're often the clunkiest part of an otherwise fluid system. Visually, the game is stunning, and that includes facial animations, which saw a massive upgrade over the first game. Everyone looks better, emotes land more naturally, expressions feel appropriate for the moment. Everyone, that is, except Henry's father, who looks like he's had a rough couple of years in underworld chemo. But in all seriousness, the animations, while much improved, start to show their seams in long play sessions. By the later stages of the game, I noticed certain gestures repeating too often. That clenched fist to show anger animation, I saw it 10 too many times, and occasionally the face would just revert. A beautiful acted scene would be followed by a robot-faced NPC staring blankly while delivering emotional lines. It's like the game was almost there but had to rely on an older animation logic as a fallback. It didn't ruin the game, but in key moments it undercuts some of the emotion. The cinematics could also use more polish. Complex scenes, especially ones involving torture, injury, or anything outside normal body movements, tend to break. One torture scene had characters just standing there unmoving while the dialogue played out, with a terrifying torture scene supposedly happening. I don't need graphic violence, but a cutaway, a reaction shot, something would have helped. But what we have are moments like these that become awkward and incomplete, especially given the emotional weight they're supposed to carry. Progression is mostly fantastic, but not all of it lands. Some high-tier perks feel like they belong to a different playstyle than the one you're using, leaving your build without anything exciting to look forward to. I had this issue in a few trees where the final perk either didn't make sense for my Henry or didn't feel impactful. And while I loved how the game made every village and settlement feel distinct, I do wish there was more to do in smaller towns. Often you'll run through a flurry of excellent side quests in one area only to hit a point where the place just dries up. And while I totally understand that not every hamlet should be bustling with endless content, it sometimes left places feeling more desolate than they should. It's the kind of thing I expect modders will address in time, but it still felt like it was a missed opportunity in the base game. Despite all of this, the key thing is, none of it broke the spell for long. These flaws aren't born from lazy design, they're a result of scope. KCD2 is doing a lot, and I'd rather have a few clunky systems in a deeply immersive world than a polished but shallow experience. Because when it works, and it usually does, there's nothing quite like it. I said at the beginning that Kingdom Come Deliverance II is one of the best games I've ever played, and after 111 hours, I can say that with more certainty than ever. It's not just the best RPG immersive sim on the market right now, it's one of the most thoughtful, grounded, and fully realized games I've experienced in years. But here's the thing, I don't think it's made for everyone. Honestly, I know it's not. This isn't a game that's going to hand you instant gratification. It doesn't want you to speed through it or treat it like a checklist. It's slow, it's specific, it demands attention, patience, empathy. And if you don't have that, if that's not what you're looking for, you probably clicked off this video a long time ago. But if you're still here, it might be because you're like me, someone who's been waiting for a game like this. Something that doesn't just simulate a world, it lets you live in one. Something that's as much about who you are as a player as it is about the character you're playing. Something rare. Because Kingdom Come Deliverance II doesn't just succeed in the big, obvious ways. Yes, it nails historical detail, complex systems, incredible visuals, but it also knows exactly what it is. It uses its length as a strength. It lets you wander and grow. It lets characters breathe. It lets Henry become someone through action, through consequence, through the quiet, subtle choices that define who we are. And then, in its biggest moments, it soars, not just with spectacle, but with weight. The black bars come in, the music swells, and suddenly you're in something that feels closer to cinema than gameplay. Not because it's trying to imitate film, but because it knows how to evoke real feeling. Joy, grief, resolve, regret. One of the early moments in the game had me feeling similar joy to Gandalf arriving in the Shire in the Fellowship of the Ring. This game doesn't want to please everyone, but for those of us who've been chasing this feeling, who want a game that feels alive and deep, it is a wonderful experience. So no, this isn't just a great RPG. It's not just an immersive sim. Kingdom Come Deliverance II sets a new standard.